Hello everyone. Well, things are going to be a little different. All of my previous Bioshock streams have been with the original game. Originally wanted to do the remaster, but the remaster I had stuttering issues. Well, I have solved the stuttering issues, so over the last couple days I actually replayed the remaster up until the point in the game where I was at with the original. So that's why you see the extra menu items here, like the director's commentary, the museum, the additional content, and whatnot. So you won't see any hackish flickering because that was used to widen the field of view, which I prefer a wider field of view. So as you go into the graphics options, you can see my field of view is at 110 right now. And I was considering going through and watching all the director's commentary, that I've found so far, but I might do that at the end of my last stream instead, just go right through and watch all these after the game's already been beat. So with that, one of the things you're going to notice, our previous game with Olympus Heights, I had already done even early in the level, both Big Daddy fights, but in this one only one spawned by the time I got to the same point in the game, so you'll see that I've only rescued one little sister. So I was doing some testing earlier and a second Big Daddy spawned, so let's load the game and hope he spawns again, and we'll get that so it's in a similar state to the original game, because I had replayed the entire game up to this point. So my loadout's going to be a little different, like plasmids and whatnot, so you'll see a few minor differences. So let's go back. Christ, that startled me last time too.
I don't like this any more than you do, kid. But you gotta understand where I'm coming from. I got 12 years down here. Big investment. Man can't walk away from a long con like that.
So that health station is broken because I believe, yeah, Nitro Splicer, I had it hacked. And Nitro Splicer used it and died and then blew up, so... Yes, Electric Buck. I could definitely use that. I'm going to fight another Big Daddy. I'm going to need all the help I can get. And I actually use Electric Buck when fighting Big Daddy. So let's switch to the armor-piercing rounds. There's the Big Daddy. He's spawned. He should be heading towards the event where the little sister will come out. Any money though. See, there's only one little sister rescued.
Oh, is it time again already? Don't be a psycho, Mr. B.
know,
No, no.
the first one that I killed went way better, and I was less cautious. I don't know why. I went through so... You know what? I don't like how that turned out, so I'm gonna redo it. He didn't charge, so, like, I took so many shots to the face because he wouldn't charge, so it was hard to get him to do what I wanted him to do. I should use the one, plasmid more.
I don't like this any more than you do, kid. But you gotta understand where I'm coming from. I got 12 years down here. Big investment. Man can't walk away from a long con like that.
Let's go get that electric buck. So let's try that again with less suck. There's the Big Daddy.
I can hear them singing their pretty song. Thanks, Mr. Bubbles.
Not bad. That went even worse, Jesus.
Mr. Bubbles, please. No, 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 no.
I guess I'm just sucking tonight. You know, you have those days where they're not very good.
Thank you.
So much for... Like, normally I can lay out the traps with the with the proximity mines, but like, I guess the Rosies just they don't bother charging at you like the bouncers do, because that's what I usually do is I lay down traps, hit the bouncer to have him charge me, and then he charges me, goes through all the traps, and by the time he gets to me, he's at a quarter health. I need some more ammo.
Welcome to the circus of now.
But business is business. Don't let it get you down. Won't make a difference when this whole place is fish food.
Alright, let's head up to the next area. Let's save first, though. I don't like how it turned out, but whatever. Alright, I'm not sure about what my tonic situation is like, whether I should get the physical or engineering. I think physical tonic would be more useful. Let's go to the gene bank, see where we sit. Combat tonic? What ones do we have here? So what do we have for physical tonic? Like another one to put. Security evasion, extra nutrition 3. Bad. You know, Sport Boost sounds pretty good too. Or I can go with that last plasmid slot. So it's between combat and physical tonic. I think the movement speed sounds pretty good, so we're gonna go grab the physical tonic slot and put the movement speed in it, because we don't have a combat tonic slot anyways, and I don't really want engineering, so let's do this. And we're gonna go Sport Boost 2. I haven't been in this area yet, so this is all new to me.
I could a raptor. Thank you, raptors. Stay on the level and out of trouble. That won't cease. Smoke. My territory. I'm worth 10 of you.
I've never actually used insect swarm. Seems kind of neat. Why was I using armor piercing? Oh, the Big Daddy. Alright, what do we have here? Stuff to look for. Okay, F5, because these have changed, so... Alright, let's quick save. Hack. We have 3 auto hacks, so... I like to quick save before and after every hack because I don't want to have to do them the second time. And I've been known to accidentally quick load for some stuff. So what can we make? Heat-seeking RPG. How many of those do we have? We can make 2 of them and be fine. So we're going to make 2 heat-seeking RPGs. Let's make some, how many anti-personal pistol rounds do we have? What else can we make? Health station. Let's hack that. Always hack the health stations because it's saved me from a splicer that's tried to heal before many times. Nope. Nope. It's the first few seconds that make all the difference in the world. Like, you have to uncover enough of the playing board before, like, it even starts, before you know whether you won or not. Alright, so let's quick save again. Alright, let's move our way up here. It was too close. That was like bad play on my part, like really bad play. That's just not a good place to use that tactic, but whatever. That. Save again. Because. I love the crying splicer, they're so freaking crazy. I could just use the napalm.
Introverted for anyone to notice.
Alright, so...
I hear your wings flapping in my home. Flip, flap, flip, flap, flip, flap. Come into the light, little moth. Come in.
You come back! This is mine!
So much for using the napalm. So what's our objective? Search Suchong's apartment. So
He's terribly funny.
Show Ryan's and all.
Tell the minister he'll just have to wait. It's my daughter.
oh, poor kitty cat.
I see you're still testing your wings a little more. Stay and enjoy the dance. But don't dare rattle their rhythm.
Oh, I'm betting if I take the electric bucket, it'll rattle their rhythm, and there's an achievement for leaving them be, so I'm gonna leave that electric bucket to be. How much electric bucket do I have? 16, that's not terrible. Alright, let's, like, if I see a gray area I can access. That it's not part of the goal. I always just explore before I go elsewhere. You never know. Shit. It seems to be like straight across is always best, so why are the load times so long? So let's go in here.
Always arrive with outstretched hands. Alright, so late.
Alright, so there's a healing station there.
When it was done with Culpepper, I left her as she was in the bathroom. I seen she had a blanket half knitted by her bed. It was nice, you know. Black
Hate to see you this way, kid. Hell, I was there when you were born. You ever have a dog you gotta put down? Breaks your heart.
Alright, so there's stairs. Alright, so we've already explored this area, so let's go back downstairs. Wait, is this the way we came in? Yeah, that's the way we came in. This stairs going up. I love looking out the windows. See, I would have needed 2 others. Oh, there's enough. Alright, so the other stairs go up to the other part of that area, so let's worry about that later. I think we've explored this area well enough for now. We'll go in and then we'll go up the central stairs, I guess?
Darling! You think you can just take what you want? This isn't the jungle! I'll send the boy out to give you a good thrashing! I've got nothing for you! Don't you dare touch me!
Hey Dan, how's it going? The weather sucks. Alright, so... something over here? That door's locked. Alright, let's hack this, so in case anyone wants to heal. Alright, what's over here? Can we go through here?
I've wasted time, not you.
Oh, dead little sisters. Save. Pays to explore because saves are usually have good stuff in them. What's in here? Brass tubes. Ugh, I hate that.
Ryan's flesh and blood. Why'd I go to the trouble? Otherwise, you'd have been cut in two by the first security bot you crossed paths with. But not Ryan. He made it so his security would recognize his genetic structure. With half his genes, you ain't immune. You got just enough to throw their metallic mooks off their game.
I've learned to just throw things in those because, like, when I first played through the game, I would use the Electrobolt plasmid to set them off, but my observation has been that's a far more expensive plasmid in terms of Eve. So like telekinesis is really cheap, so just throwing things through to trigger them is far more effective use of the Eve that I have. So let's see, we have this area. Go back out here and around. Let's override our save. Must be upstairs. Let's quick save after hacking that camera. Alright, so it's up here.
Squatter,
filibuster between Fontaine and his little German beanpole. Why a guy like Fontaine would waste his time with that spooky route when he could get the gravy from any dish he chooses is beyond the understanding of this paparazzi. Even reset the door code to 5744. Maybe to be double sure that beanpole don't spout up in his yard again.
When it was done with Culpepper, I left her as she was in the bathroom. I seen she had a blanket half knitted by her bed. Nice, black and red and pretty. So I took it, so I could, have somebody finish it, so it could be of use to someone. It just didn't seem right to leave it lying there by itself.
Wait, can I make anything for the chemical thrower? You know what? Let's mess around with the crossbow boom a little bit. Oh yeah, an automatic hack tool.
Whoa, you come to my town? To my town? You think that I'm an amateur? Fucking amateur!
Nitrous splicers are kind of annoying.
Animals, every one of them. Make a day of it. I just adore this.
Getting drunk. Hey, it gives me a little bit of ease, so.
They talk. In the end, they've got nothing to offer society. Just more mouths to feed.
What was up here again? Is there anything interesting, or do I have everything cut? No, there's something somewhere. No. So let's just drop down here. And we'll go across. Okay, that was dumb.
Adam's the ultimate score, kid. No more grifts, no more scams. A monopoly on Adam makes Standard Oil look like a piggly wiggly. All that's left is burying the bodies. Already 6 miles under the Atlantic, you've got one hell of a head start.
Yeah. No, it's not too late. I'll get to it.
Alright. So there's nothing over that way.
Get out of my territory!
Look at my home, torn apart by Fontaine and his pigs. Why? Who knows? But I am sure there is answer in Susan's flat. You will not believe me, but there was a time when this was all so beautiful.
Well, that's not very nice.
My lucky day, like every other day.
There's an automatic hack tool on the one guy's corpse, so not that worried about it. But let's quick save nonetheless. We're up at $254. Where is the guy, though? Is this guy? No. I think it was on the 3rd floor. Bingo. So, Culpepper's apartment. Where are we at? Tenenbaums. How many personal pistol rounds can you hold? I don't remember. I wish it showed like X of Y. Yeah, it's Tenenbaums. Let's go back and go down.
You think you're some kind of hero? I ordered you up from Suchong like a Chinese dinner. A little from column A, a little from column B. What do you plan on going back to? Your fake family, Emily? Your phony dreams? Putting you out of your misery will be the nicest thing anyone's ever done for you.
I don't know why I just walked around that. That's just... It's just gone all the way down.
Yeah, Mark,
stair goes up there.
It'll all be fine.
Yeah, stairs that I don't have access to. But there was an audio thing that had a code.
Looks like
5744.
between Fontaine and his little German beanpole. Why a guy like Fontaine would waste his time with that spooky crowd when he could be getting the gravy from any dish he chooses is beyond the understanding of this paparazzi. Even reset the door code to 5744. Maybe to be double sure that beanpole don't sprout up in his yard again.
If they could save one life, it's to save the world entire. I made a place for the children here, but it is you who are their savior. Will you stop here, or will you deliver them from this terrible city at long last?
I'm gonna miss this place. Rapture was a candy store for a guy like me. Guys who thought they knew it all, dames who thought they'd seen it all. Give me a smart mom over a dumb one every time.
So let's do some more exploration.
These sad saps. They come to Rapture thinking they're gonna be captains of industry. But they all forget that somebody's gotta scrub the toilets. What an angle they gave me. I hand these mugs a cot and a bowl of soup, and they give me their lives. Who needs an army when I got Fontaine's Home for the Poor?
Oh, jeez, I couldn't find it. you ever see the camera shake like that, it's because like something startled me. Like that thing. I heard it wind up, but I didn't like see where it was, and yeah, that happened. Go the other way. Fontaine's apartment. Seems like a momentous place. Mysterious chemical. Interesting. Okay, that's a rather lavish bathroom. I wonder if that's the exterior pressure. Aha! Very cleverly hidden. Got most of the level. Except I have to figure out how to get there. Supposed to be the oh, this is the stairs that are blocked off in Cohen's apartment. That's in Cohen's apartment. Well, let's go back to this last area. No, let's hack this first. By the way, interesting thing, the Circus of Value's voice is Ken Levine, the director of the game.
Welcome to the Circus of Value!
Alright, let's go in here.
That Tannenbaum ain't what you think. Florence Nightingale, huh? That'll all come crashing down before you can say canned tomatoes. I've seen good bunco, and I've seen great bunco. But when you walk through Rapture and World War II without even a scratch, you got more than leprechauns watching over you.
Alright, so goal is in here.
Fontaine's become some kind of boogeyman in Rapture. That myth gives him power. But peel back Flim Flam and a humbug, he's just another conman. And like all conmen, he worries he'll end up on the wrong side of grift. That's why he commissioned a lot of 192. The antidote to the mental control plasmid. Fontaine said I'd better not tell anybody about the antidote. Not even Tenera. And Suchong is inclined to listen.
Now hold there for a moment. There's that drug again. Did we not see that at Fontaine's flat? We'll find some at Suchong's lab as well.
I have Leadhead and Thuggish fully upgraded. Alright, so where's the goal now? Yeah, lot 192 run.
Sad saps. They come to Rapture thinking they're gonna be captains of industry. But they all forget that somebody's gotta scrub the toilets. What an angle they gave me. I hand these mugs a cart and a bowl of soup, and they give me their lives. Who needs an army when I got Fontaine?
Oh shit. I thought that's where that splicer went. Fuck. This is why you save often, kids.
Welcome to the circus of value. Welcome to the circus of value.
Alright, so I have to do all that again.
That tennis bomb is what you think. Florence Nightingale, huh? That'll all come crashing down before you can say canned tomatoes. I've seen good bunco, and I've seen great bunco. But when you waltz through Rapture and World War II without even a scratch, you got more than leprechauns watching over you.
of boogeyman in Rapture. That myth gives him power. But peel back Flim Flam and a humbug, he's just another con man. And like all con men, he worries he'll end up on the wrong side of grift. That's why he commissioned Lot 192. The antidote to the mental control class. Fontaine said I better not tell anybody about the antidote. Suchong is inclined to listen.
Now hold there for a moment. There's that drug again. Did we not see that at Fontaine's flat? We'll find some at Suchong's lab as well.
Let's save here. In case we, like, hit a Big Daddy again.
With our skinner boxes and our electric shocks. What a waste of time. Until Adam, you could no more domesticate a child than a boa constrictor. Fontaine gives the Suchong history for a child that he wants to imprint in the child's head. Person. A jukebox. Ready to play whatever tune Fontaine wants to hear.
Alright, since we caught up to where we are, let's save again and try not to hit any Big Daddies again this time. So we have to go up to Fontaine's apartment.
Fast for a free 2-hour trial. He'll appreciate the difference. She will too.
Compound is taking hold. The effects of the mental suggestion are now gone, but there will certainly be side effects.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Lot 192 has reorganized your entire plasmid structure. I should have known you would need a larger dosage. You will have to locate another dosage to fully remove the effects.
Good. Now go find Suchong's lab in Artemis Suites. In there, no doubt there will be more of this Lot 192.
challenging when I don't have any control over the plasmas I want to use, because tactics all of a sudden become a little bit more challenging. That's kind of a cool twist. Let's see if we can get into Cohen's apartment. Come on, get in the envelope. Yeah. I'm not going to be using him anytime soon. You know, if I were smart, I would have taken the elevator. I was taking the elevator down and then hacked him.
Welcome to the Circus of Value.
Let's go into Cohen's apartment. It's over there, I think. Yeah. I need to see something here. You're supposed to be able to go to his apartment here. I'm gonna look that up real quick. Because you're supposed to leave the dancing couple alive and not attack Cohen. Oh, you do have to kill them. Okay. Okay.
Will you ever learn to take instruction? I'm coming down there, little wolf. Coming down to teach you to dance.
Alright. That's why I wanted to go up here. I don't know which of those two to do. Use the pistol more. Totally worth doing. Alright, so let's go to our goal, which is all the way downstairs. Let's save now that we've done that. So we have to go, is that the second floor, or? No, hold on a second. Yeah, we go this way.
Pull it a little light and surgical saving.
And we go back to the starter area. That's not too, that's actually kind of fun. But alright, so off to Apollo Square. I might do some of that before ending the stream, but we're in progress in the game. Let's actually, let's wait until we're actually in Apollo Square to save. I mean, it'll do an autosave at the beginning of it, but whatever. I'm gonna wait until I have like full control over plasmids before I fight a Big Daddy, because
I was so angry when I came down here, but my God, I had no idea. There's armed men all over the place. I saw a woman climb over the fence
Ryan's trying to escape? One of Ryan's guards pointed at her and she lit on fire. Just like that. What's happening here?
Welcome to the Circus of Value.
Alright, so what does the total map look like? Artemis, Estia. How many little sisters are on this map? There's two of them. There's one director's commentary. Wait a minute. Was there a director's commentary on Olympus? No, I don't think there was. I think the next one was Apollo Square. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save the game and then go back. We're going to watch all of the documentaries that are part of the remaster edition. Because I played the regular version up to date, and I think they're fascinating and they're really cool to watch. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So let's go back to the main menu, and then we'll watch a few documentaries and see some interesting stories on the history and making of the game. This kind of stuff fascinates me, so let's go back to the director's commentary. So at Rapture's Denizens is going to be the next one we find somewhere on this level. So we're not going to exit the level till we find it. And we have one at Point Prometheus and one at the Proving Grounds. So let's see what makes Rapture real.
Hey, I'm Jeff Keighley here in Boston to go behind the scenes to hear some untold stories about the making of Bioshock with Ken Levine and Sean Robertson. Let's talk a bit about the theme and setting of Bioshock, Rapture. I think a lot of people, when they played the game for the first time, Ken, they wondered, how did you even dream up this place? And I know you said publicly before that part of the reason you what led you to Rapture was this idea of fully simulating a place. Tell us about that sort of idea and the frustrations you had with other games where you sort of hit a bound.
I think our philosophy was always to do what we were doing 100% rather than try to do something bigger and do it 50% or 40%. So one of the ideas of, and this sort of came from System Shock 2 as well, where you focus on an area that you can really bring to life and you kind of eliminate the questions of, well, why can't I go over the bridge to New Jersey? So we were able to really make a place, I think, that felt believable and real, even though in actuality it was really quite limited. But we just sort of dressed it with all these buildings outside that were all, that were all basically glorified fakes. We let the story drive what we needed to show rather than some kind of like predetermined map which we set down, which is a little different than like System Shock 2, where we actually mapped a spaceship out deck by deck. Yeah. Because I don't know what the philosophy felt a little different there, because you want to feel like a real spaceship that was sort of stacked on top of each other. But Rapture was free to sprawl across the ocean floor.
Although you guys originally, Sean, were talking about doing this game on a sort of spaceship again, right?
Yeah, when we first started talking about what the spiritual successor to System Shock 2 was going to be, Spaceship came up, but again, we wanted a limited environment, and we didn't necessarily want to do Spaceship again. And our first actual exploration of this space was underwater, but ultimately ended up looking like a spaceship. It just happened to have a couple of
windows,
seaweed fronds outside. And that started to push us towards what artistic statement that we wanted to make this look different, and what rules we were going to set for the world. How at every turn we were going to try to remind the player that they were in fact underwater and that this wasn't a spaceship.
And how, like, underwater, we obviously know you did underwater, then sitting in the sky, like, where did you come with the idea of, like, doing this underwater?
I think there was probably a conversation. It's like, well, what kind of places could be cut off from other places?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know, spaceship, summer camp, you know, like any island notion, right? Something that's cut off from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So you never felt like you should be able to go over that bridge to New Jersey.
I don't want to apply some deep and meaningful conversation. I think it was one of those ideas that you just kind of say, and then everybody's, that sounds cool, let's try that. Let's go for it.
And I think it lended itself to having very nice views out the window without having to build an insane amount of unique assets.
Right.
By today's standards, we still were a small team back then. And there's an expectation that because you're underwater, the view distances are going to be short, so you can really kind of fade out into the fog at a short distance and not have the expectation that, why can't I see forever? So there's a lot of limitations in a good way that we put on ourselves by being underwater, as opposed to, like, if you're on a cruise ship, then you'd expect to see across the water, and we'd have to deal with that. Same thing with an island.
Or
and
on
you
a
have
city
outdoor
in the sky. Where
yeah, exactly.
Which was a lot more complicated, yeah.
So you came up with the idea of, let's do this underwater, let's do this sort of isolated place. Then you had to answer the question of, you know, why would someone build this? Is that sort of how it worked, sort of order of operations? You then had to come up with a story to explain?
Yeah, I think we wanted a very believable reason why they'd be there. Right. And sort of the necessary isolation of the place sort of led to, well, what kind of person would want to do this? And I wasn't even particularly aware of the sort of political implications of what I was reading, but I've been reading, I read The Fountainhead. Right. By Ayn Rand, and I mostly thought it was an interesting story. Like, I didn't realize that people were sort of basing their sort of political lives around it, because I wasn't that tuned in to that stuff at that point. And so, but I love the dialogue and the kind of speechifying in it, because you can see a video game character speaking with that kind of certainty and that kind of confident philosophy. It just seemed like a natural kind of thing to apply to this place. And so it just sort of all came together as a sort of who is the guy who would do this? Well, you know, that character. He was sort of this amalgamation of characters from Ayn Rand's books and Ayn Rand herself. This sort of idealistic person who says, well, the only way to do this is to separate from the rest of the world.
It's a shame these videos don't have a pause.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone.
We knew from a technical standpoint that we wanted isolation. We also knew to sell it, we needed a compelling storyline, a backstory that why would this place exist? Otherwise, how are we going to make Rapture feel like it's lived in if we don't have the reason for it to be there? So once we decided on the underwater location and then the closed off spaces, that objectivist story kind of came in and made the art stronger and made the level design stronger, because we could feed back into that loop.
And I think that's why we had to have sort of Andrew Ryan's pitch right at the beginning of the game. We wanted people to understand why somebody would go there. And so he makes this very personal one-to-one pitch to the gamer, but also that was the pitch he'd make to people, which was, you know, there's a place that you can be free of all these things, where you can not be sort of put upon by the government and not be afraid of nuclear war and not be afraid of all these other things that will plague you on the surface. We wanted that pitch to sort of resonate and make sense, because that's, otherwise by the time you got there you'd be like, well, this place is just fantasy, nobody would ever come here. And that the beauty of the place also was also tied into that. It had to be a very attractive proposition, or people who would believe that people would go leave their lives and go to the bottom of the ocean.
I'm sure in some ways you had to convince the team and enroll them in your sort of vision of, you know, who this character was going to be and what the setting was going to be. How did that work, Sean? I mean, did Ken come in and say, hey, I've been reading these books, and I think we could sort of...
I believe he just came in one day on a horse and said, Ayn Rand, everybody read The Fountainhead.
Exactly. I bought 30 copies of it.
Yeah, I think,
here's a 2,000-page book or something.
Yeah.
Go read it.
I mean, really, it was more organic. Like I said, we knew that we had this location, and you struggle to fill it with stories, and you struggle to find meaning of why does this place exist? What's my motivation? And as Ken started to explore Ayn Rand a little more and started talking to us about it, and we were having that conversation, and it's like, oh, this could totally work. Like, this is exciting. Like, this is something that really hasn't been done in a video game before. And if we had flipped it and come up with the idea first before the location, I don't think we would have really been that excited about it. But we had a location, and now we're trying to fill it with that story. And because of the order of operation there, you start to get excited, like, oh, I could totally make this work. This is going to really make it feel like a lived-in space.
As you think of sort of the the setting and
they do a good job of that
character or something, was there a moment that you think back, it's like, oh, like right then and there, like I got excited when you attached the Ayn Rand
For me,
stuff
it was
to
it was going to Rockefeller Center and seeing the visual.
Uh-huh.
So I told this story before, but my wife and I were in New York, and we went to Rockefeller Center, which was, if you go to Rockefeller Center, it basically looks exactly like Rapture. It's because every building, you're sort of encircled. It's this block in New York, or a couple of blocks in New York, where Radio City Music Hall is, and where 30 Rockefeller Plazas, where you see that show 30 Rock, and the ice skating rink, and where they put the Christmas tree, and it's this very iconic location. But what's cool about it, it's all one, unlike the rest of the city. Everywhere you look, it's one architectural style. It's Art Deco, and it's very iconic Art Deco. And my wife and I were there, and we were sort of working on the game, and we didn't have a visual style. And all of a sudden, I started looking around, and I said, oh, this could be a visual for the game. Also, the geometry of it was actually quite conducive to making a video game because it wasn't overly complicated geometry. Art Deco is quite
bold and simple.
Bold and geometric, and simple. And so my wife and I bought a couple of Taurus cameras before iPhone cameras,
exactly. Throwaway cameras,
yeah, throwaway cameras, those little Kodak things, and we just started photographing doorknobs and light fixtures, and just sort of developed the photos. Remember that? Brought them in and said,
"Come to the office. Here's a stack of stuff,
here's a
Sean.
stack of photos.
Take a look."
I'll see you guys in a couple of years. Go make this.
City where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, Rapture can become your city as well.
So you had kind of a theme, you came up with an art style, some of the iconic characters, and then, you really had to build the narrative around it. And you've talked about, a lot of the themes in the game, and, greed, jealousy, sex, violence, all the things that sort of, drive us or what destroy us. And that was something I think that, as you thought about the story of the game, you wanted to, I'm sure, reflect some of those, right? Because I think people love the characters. It's sort of flawed in a way, and this is a world which is its own little microcosm, but had a lot of tension inside of it.
Yeah, I mean, the character of Ryan was sort of, he's basically invisible.
I might not choose to watch all of these because it would take a while.
But he's very present because he exists. The city is
I might
dead,
watch
right?
maybe a third of them, and then watch a third of them.
We never want to cut away
until I
to a
catch up,
cutscene where you
or
saw
the next time I
Ryan,
stream until I catch up.
Planning and scheming. We wanted him to be very present without actually being present. But once you had Ryan, once you had his desire to protect this vision of his, you just had to then come up with the characters who'd be arrayed in opposition to him. So we had this character, the Big Daddy, and then eventually the character of Little Sister. And so characters like Tenenbaum came along, like, here's a person who's in opposition to him for this reason. And then you have, for more noble reasons. And then you have a character like Atlas, who's much more cynical opposition. Once we had all those characters arrayed, we're like, well, who are you? And, you ended up being a sort of, a pawn in the middle of all this opposition to Ryan. We just kept kind of homing in on that theme and making sure that you weren't, eventually figuring out that you couldn't just be here by an accident, that you're an integral part of this story, even though you don't know you're an integral part of this story. You think you're just there by happenstance.
Look, Mr. Bubbles, it's an angel. I can see light coming from his belly. Wait a minute, he's still breathing. It's alright. I know he'll be an angel soon.
You know, the game does have one of the most fantastic openings in a game. Let's do behind the pitch. See, how many do we have? 7.
Bioshock was groundbreaking in many regards when it released in 2007, though fundamentally it shared many consistencies with Irrational's System Shock series. What elements of System Shock translated into Bioshock, and what was refined, altered, and innovated upon to create the world of Rapture? Let's take a look at the long road from System Shock to Bioshock.
Incidentally, I do have System Shock 2 in my Steam library. I haven't played it yet. I got System Shock 1 too, but the Enhanced Edition wouldn't play, and I didn't see any point in playing the DOS version.
Everyone knows where the game ended up, but I think fans would be interested to learn where this game or the idea of doing this game started. And I think, you know, folks know System Shock and the legacy of that game, huge fan base. Did it start as a System Shock game initially?
No, I mean, because we didn't have the rights to that, right? We kind of felt that there was more game design to mine there. You know, that it was sort of, we did that one game, and it was sort of the first game that really combined shooting and RPG, and it was a very small budget. You know, it was a very small team, and it was the first game we had ever done, so we got pretty lucky, I think, in terms of how well it came out, but the odds were sort of stacked against it. And the team, was really enthusiastic about doing a game like that. And time had evolved, and the team was much more, we had done a bunch of games together, and we had a stable technology base, and we were like, okay, well, which System Shock 2 was not. I mean, that engine, no game had ever shipped on that engine. It was a very crude piece of technology. Most of us had never shipped a game at the time. So like, well, what if we had a stable technology base, and we had a team that was more experienced and more seasoned, and we had, an actual, like our director, and which we didn't really have on System Shock 2. What could we do? And so I think there was a lot of enthusiasm in the team to really try to do a more mature version of that kind of game. This is before we had sold the company to Take-Two, and we were an independent developer, right? We were sitting there, we were using the money we made from other development deals we had, and we would try to scrape together whatever time and money we had to work on this thing. And it was not actually something I was particularly keen on doing. The team was much more keen on doing a sort of a System Shock-ish game than I was, because...
That's what you were pitching, right? Like System Shock 3 at one point, right?
Well, I mean, there was an actual System Shock 3 that we were pitching back in the day when we were right after System Shock 2, but that never happened. Right, we couldn't get anybody interested, because System Shock 2 sold like 5 copies, right? And so as the business guy, the guy who had to not only just sort of write the content, but the guy who had to go out and get the deals and pay everybody, I wasn't particularly excited about doing this, because it was very disappointing when we did System Shock 2 and nobody bought it. It got great reviews, it got these insane reviews, but it left us in a place where it didn't really move the needle for us in terms of making payroll. So I wasn't super excited about it, because I didn't see a publisher be interested in it, and I didn't see the audience actually be particularly interested in this kind of game. And it was really the team who convinced me to invest in this, because they're enthusiastic. I think a lot of them came to the studio because of System Shock 2. And so finally they sort of battered me down. And it's good they did, because I was not the first fan of doing this.
And I know initially there was something called the Serene Dawn. That was a spaceship, or what was that?
No, that was
the name of a cult, right?
Cult.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
That one's, I think, been lost to the... If I remember correctly, Serene Dawn was a cult. You were playing as a deprogrammer that was infiltrating the cult, and your name happened to be Carlos Coelho, who was one of our programmers at the time.
It's named after him, yeah. Then there was a story notion that I always really found interesting, which was that you have these cults, and you have sometimes people who they're these sort of characters who are really live on the edge of the gray morality, which is these guys who come in and essentially kidnap people out of these cults, or rescue them, depending on how you look at it. Because what it really is.
This part's a
from
bit
a
of an
functional
interesting
standpoint, it's
discussion.
kidnapping, right? You're coming to an adult, and you're saying, you're hired by their parents or whoever. And this was in the story. It was like a senator whose daughter joined one of these religious movements called the Serene Dawn. You said,
Yeah,
the Serene Dawn. And I always thought that was a really interesting tension of this hero who's basically a kidnapper, and taking a young woman against her will out of the place that she was in. Now, you could also make the other argument that, well, she was not really there by her will. But there's a really interesting conversation that goes on there. I think there was actually a Kate Winslet movie, a Harvey Keitel Kate Winslet movie, which dealt with a similar theme. Because usually you hear that story, these deprogrammers as a sort of heroic kind of notion. But I always thought that, well, there's something interesting about agency going on there, and about are people entitled to make bad mistakes, or is it a bad mistake? It all depends on the person. And I'm not a fan of religious cults or religion in general, but there seemed to be an interesting discussion of freedom there and independent decision making. And
there's a theme there too at A Clockwork Orange, if you're familiar with that story.
It was really mostly for the purpose of, we needed something to go out and pitch to publishers, and so we know we didn't have a ton of time to really develop it. So that sounded like, all right, this will do for now.
And was that pre-Underwater City? I mean, this was just like an idea for a story.
We may have stepped away from that to do the cult thing, but then we went back to the underwater.
No, we had that one room, remember?
We had the one World War II room with the roaches on the ground and like these weird test tube things that you could walk around. I don't know where that fell. It could have been underwater. There was no windows.
The thing is, we were a small business, right? And we were trying to figure out a way to sell this thing with spending the least amount of money, because we didn't have any money. We didn't have a pot to piss in. So we would do this demo. That was one room basically, just to show. And I'd write up a document, and we'd take it around. And I'd fly around the country, be like, "Here's our room." It was a different time, And
we had just come off of SWAT 4. One of the advantages we had is that we were so familiar with that engine at that point that we could really start cranking through, small rooms and lighting and making things look good. So
I took it on the road to sell it to somebody, and nobody cared. We'd go to a publisher, and look, they have to make money, right? And then we'd say, we say, oh, serve a spiritual successor to System Shock 2, and they'd be like, well, how did that sell? And I'd be like, my mom likes it, and they would be like, well, we can't, and usually we'd be talking to a fan. A lot of executives, like sort of junior executives, were fans of System Shock, and they'd go to their boss and they'd be super excited, and their boss would open up, their Excel spreadsheet and be like, no, we can't do this. And I think the pitch probably evolved as we kept trying different permutations trying to sell, but we were also out there trying to sell like 2 or 3 other things at the time. We had a pitch for a game called Monster Island, and
well, our SWAT 5 pitch was
Zombie SWAT.
Yeah, we had just come off of SWAT 4, which is like hardcore tactical, and we decided they wanted us to do another SWAT, and we didn't really want to do another hardcore tactical game, so we're like, what if we added zombies to SWAT? Like, you're a SWAT team that fights zombies and werewolves. That sounds awesome. And it was like, no, it doesn't.
And this is before, before zombies were a thing.
Yeah.
And so we came with this thing called Division 9.
Division 9, yeah.
That probably would have been even a bigger financial success than Bioshock.
Wow.
But we couldn't get anybody interested in it.
We didn't have enough werewolves in the demo, I think.
We had 0 werewolves in the demo. Yeah, we were going to have werewolves, weren't we?
Werewolves and vampires. That was the
whole, really?
Yeah,
werewolves,
the whole,
vampires, zombies?
Just throw it all the Universal Studios monsters from
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what happened was we couldn't sell it, but we were always sort of independent-minded. And so I said, well, what if we sort of did this in reverse? Instead of getting a publisher first and then doing a press tour on it, what if we sort of did the press first?
Yeah.
And we called up a guy, Andrew Park, who's at GameSpot at the time, who was a fan of System Shock 2 and a great guy. And I said, will you come out and look at this thing we're doing and write a story on it? And he was like, sure. And Andrew flew out, and we showed him what we had, which is this very, very rudimentary thing about an underwater base. And he wrote up an article and sort of featured as like, this is the spiritual successor to System Shock 2. And the next day, the phone started ringing from publishers who now all of a sudden saw the article was getting all this pickup and all these comments, and people were excited. And that really, I think, put it over the top in terms of being able to sell it, even though it was not Bioshock at that point. It was called Bioshock, but it was not Bioshock. There would have been I don't think there would have been a game. We never would have sold it without Andrew coming out doing that.
That's actually kind of cool.
My belly's full.
And lucky, actually. A lot of that is luck. Okay, let's watch the deeper shooter now.
One of the biggest challenges Irrational faced when developing Bioshock was figuring out a way to retain the feeling of a deep RPG while making the game accessible to a broader console audience. Ultimately, the team succeeded in creating an intricate system of weapon and character upgrades that gave the player choice and customization while keeping the gameplay fast, lean, and engaging.
One of the hallmarks of Bioshock, to me at least, was that it really blended RPG and sort of first-person action game together in a way that, you know, is sort of standard today, but a decade ago was really pretty revolutionary. And I know for the team, I think at some point it became clear that you wanted this to work on consoles, not on PC, right?
Well, both, yeah.
Yeah. But so the idea of, you know, doing a console game and a PC game, and doing something that sort of felt like a shooter but had much more depth. And I know in some of the early design docs you talked about sort of creating an FPS plus versus an RPG light. What was the difference in your mind between those two?
I think for us, is the big difference between System Shock and Bioshock ended up being that System Shock was more about your character growth and Bioshock was more about the environment. Because with System Shock, we really didn't have System Shock 2. We didn't really have either our team to make enough assets or the visual power to sort of make a really convincing environment. But as we started working on Bioshock, the art team was so strong that the ability to tell a story within the environment became the most important thing about the game. And that was sort of not something we thought right at the beginning. That was not really a concept we had. But as we started building things, we could realize that the visual
A lot of the environmental storytelling in Bioshock is very reminiscent of Half-Life and Half-Life 2. And another game that really ties into that style of storytelling is Metro. Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light use that same kind of storytelling. Although I think that's closer to the experience of Half-Life than what Bioshock is.
So it was still, I think, for the time, very, very revolutionary. But I think System Shock 2 was even more ahead of its time in terms of that growth thing, because we defocused a little bit. Primarily, part of it was just figuring out how to do that all on a console controller was very tricky.
No, I remember even the early demos, people like, you know, you see a plasma, you see like a upgraded weapon, people are like, oh, I've never seen that before in a shooter. And that was, you know, when you were coming out of the sort of, you know, the Quake, Doom, Half-Life, where it's like you have, you know, 8 weapons on the keyboard and you sort of knew what they were and they weren't going to change. Yeah. Sean, was that something that, you know, from a sort of creative standpoint, was it always clear that that was something you guys wanted to do, or it evolved over time because you wanted to have more depth in the game?
I mean, it certainly evolved over time, and each, you know, upgrade path was slightly, had its own unique challenges. Like certainly upgrading the weapons, you had to design a base weapon that didn't feel like crap. Still felt like something that you wanted to use, but then the ability to add the upgrades to that, and each of the upgrades can come in any order, so you have to be aware that this, you know, parts A, B, and C could come in at any different time to upgrade the weapon. In a first-person shooter, that's your star. That's the thing that you're seeing all the time. When it comes to other things, plasmids, things that are, you know...
Tonics.
Tonics, yes, sorry. It's been a while.
Come on, Sean.
I know, it's 10 years. Those things were more offloaded to machines that you would then have to interact with, so you're not carrying the inventory around with you. But each of these decisions on, you know, how we're going to upgrade the player, you know, it wasn't like a mouse and keyboard. Okay, we can just use the mouse, and you have all these buttons at your disposal.
You could arbitrarily point at a part of the screen really easily, which you could do in System Shock 2.
Yeah, so we certainly, you know, learned trial by fire when we were trying to adapt these things to the console at the time.
Yeah, and like having, you know, different ammo types and stuff like that. Like we went through numerous iterations of the interface to make it. Like we had the first times, you know, we sort of put the interface into play. It was very obtuse and very tricky to get your head around, and we just kept working on it and working on it and working on it because you want to feel like second nature. But that was, we spent a lot of time on that.
What motivated the idea of having so much choice in the way you could sort of play through this game? What was it to give the player a better sense of authorship over the experience, or what was driving that?
I've always liked the idea of giving the player a lot of agency in terms of their play style and experimenting with the play style and trying different things and seeing what worked and didn't work and interacting with the environment. The notion that it's sort of a playground that you get to play around with and imprint your own desire on was great, because I think we were more skeptical about being able to do that with story at the time. In fact, so much to the point where that became almost like a joke. That becomes the meta joke of the game, of how little agency you have in your story. But agency in terms of how you play the experience and how you load out your weapons and how you interact with the environment, as compared to most shooters at the time, where basically like you can shoot them with a shotgun or shoot them with the the pistol. That was really important to us. So we spent a lot of time trying to make the world react in a way that you would expect and hope it to react when you tried something.
Right. And some of those system or decisions we made about systems fed back into the narrative, like locking Adam behind Big Daddy and the little sister. Like, you can't get Adam unless you deal with the Big Daddy, which then becomes a roving boss fight, which then becomes another system that I don't know if we planned that from the start or was one of those happy, like, serendipity, like, oh, this decision that we made about putting Adam behind the Big Daddy totally works because now we have a different type of boss fight that you hadn't really seen in other games.
Actually, it was the other way, because what happened was originally there was no concept of Adam, and Big Daddy just had money and other treasure on them, like every other splicer. Yeah. And they were so tough, nobody would ever fight them, because why on earth would you go after that guy?
Right, go off a bunch of small splicers and get the same amount, yeah.
So we had to come up with a currency that was exclusive to them, because we knew that was where the fun was, right? But we also knew people were terrified of them, and we didn't want to fight them. Yeah. So video game development and system development is a lot like economics, right? In economics, you try to encourage certain behaviors through tax, usually through tax policy. Well, you want business growth, so you lower taxes on certain segments of the business economy, or you want to encourage, people to move into this area, so you make incentives to move in here. We had to make an incentive for players to fight the Big Daddy, and Adam became that incentive. And then once you had this Adam, then you had a new piece of narrative, which they could then incorporate back into the story.
Yeah. That old tasty Adam fucking drink.
Stay away from her, or it is you who will be shot next.
Easy now, Doctor. He's just looking for a wee bit of Adam. Just enough to get by.
I'll not have him hurt my little ones.
Talk a bit about the plasmids and the vending machines and that sort of whole approach to, I guess, what is kind of a tech tree, but, and coming from PC games, used to strategy games and whatnot with very complicated ways of how you would upgrade things. I thought you guys did a really interesting approach to how you made it very accessible to a console audience. How did that evolve? Did you know the vending machines were going to be there from the get-go?
Well, we had vending machines in System Shock 2, so we were sort of lifting that, and I always thought that was a fun notion because it's a affordance that people already understand. They see a vending machine, they know immediately, oh, that's where I buy stuff, right? Yeah. And you also then have to have a shopkeep. When we talked about wanting to make things, put limitations on ourselves so things felt fully believable. Yeah. If we had a shopkeeper sitting there, you can't shoot him. He sits there, he doesn't say anything. Right. And all of a sudden he feels fake. Where a vending machine, the Circus of Values machine, can feel 100% authentic. Despite the fact that it's selling like ammo and stuff like that, which is,
But in an objectivist society where you don't have rules and regulations,
which it kind of like lends itself to Borderlands.
But you don't then break
the ammo vending
fiction
machines
at
there
all by having these characters who sort of don't really live and breathe in the world. So the vending machines became an important part of that. But we still want to give them character, and hence and so. That clown image came from a piece of, that image is actually from like a fruit container or something from like the 1940s. Okay. And so we had a book of like royalty-free images, and I saw that image, and I'm like, let's put that clown on it, and we'll call it Circus of Values. And then, we wrote some lines for it, decided he'd be this sort of asshole clown, and then we hired the best actor in the world to play that part. That was me. My biggest Avengers, I didn't cost anything.
I didn't know you were really.
I was a clown. Yeah. I was a clown.
I hear it in my head every day.
My wife hates that voice. She hates that voice.
You can give us a little of it right here.
Welcome to the Circus of Values. She does not allow me to do that, so I do it outside of the house. Okay. But it allowed us to have something that felt very rich and very real, while being very limited at the same time.
Feel your cravings at the Circus of
And also, you know, the plasmids and sort of the motif of sort of the videos and how you explain sort of what a plasmid was. That was a really fun way, I thought, to sort of explain that. Sean, how did you guys evolve that? Because it was a very artistic approach.
I think those came on pretty late too, because we were developing all these systems, and you make the assumptions because you're dealing with them every day that the player who gets this game is going to understand what these systems are. And we always joke that you can't ship a developer with a game, or you can't expect somebody to have a README file for all of these things. Nobody's understanding what these plasmids are or how to use them. How do we present these to the audience in such a way that they're going to understand what it is fictionally and what it is functionally? Because Rob Waters did a lot of the animations on those, and we sit down and we write out like a little 30-second commercial of what this thing is. And again, because going back to the narrative, this is what would happen in Rapture. People are trying to sell these things, so they would come up with commercials to explain why you need this. Using that as your framework, you can then come up with all of these little gags that people will remember that have a little personality to them. But I think ultimately in the end weren't that expensive to create, because they're cheap.
I think one of the most important things about it is we didn't want them to be long, and we didn't have a lot of budget for the arts. We had like a couple of frames of animation in them essentially. And so we had to figure out, how do we message how this thing works in like that. And that's what marketing is, right? It's how do you message how something works. And marketing and tutorializing are very similar things, right? You're trying to get a message across in a very brief period of time in a very snappy fashion. And I think that one of the things that I always felt about games is that tutorials are sort of death. And because they're usually like, you go into a scene and there's like a shooting range or something like that, and
narratively they never really make sense either,
and they're so boring. And so we always try to put a big burden on
Valve
ourselves.
is really good at putting tutorials in the narrative. Most of the time, you don't even know you're doing it. The only
brevity is really important.
traditional
So we had a bunch of art constraints.
tutorials I can think of are the gravity gun, and in a way the RPG.
I don't know if they were 30 seconds.
Yeah,
they were really short.
Seconds.
Yeah, 15 seconds long. We had to explain a whole plasmid in that period of time, and I think that was a good exercise because it also made the game. It forced us to be concise and to really explain what this thing was like that.
Throw objects at foes. You can even catch grenades and throw them back.
Alright, so I think that is where we're going to end for the night. I will see you next time in Apollo Square, whenever that happens to be. I'd like to finish this before Far Cry 5 comes out. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I am going to relax for the rest of the evening. Have a good one. Bye.